Morning, everybody, and thank you for inviting me. By way of introduction, Aid Dixon. So my role is a global technology strategist at Microsoft. I've been with Microsoft for just shy of 5 years. Prior to that, a 30-year career in IT industry.
You're not old enough.
I don't. I feel it today, I tell you. And just as a quick trip down memory lane before we get onto AI. I mean, so I started out in IT. I did an IT degree. And as part of that, I studied artificial intelligence. I was writing, declarative programming in Lisp and Prolog, and I was like, this is really clever. That's 30 years ago. I left uni and I joined a major insurer. And actually, at that time, I thought, I'm going to get off my ass and I'm going to go up to the head of strategy in the group. And I took a paper on the World Wide Web. And they were like, what is it? So actually, right from the outset there, that was the start of innovation for me, was creating a project. We were the first major insurer to create a global quotes engine online, off the back of actually my initial paper. I didn't think I would see another major technological breakthrough in my career. And then the smartphone came out. I was like, bloody hell, this is... So, and then you start to see then, I've got this major amount of technology in my pocket. And I thought, that'll be it then. That's it, I'm done. I'm going to retire and the world's not going to see another big technological change. And then this year happened. And it takes me back to when I started doing AI. 30 years ago, AI, I mean, it's been evolving for a long time. But this year has been the breakthrough for AI. Hence why, I guess, why we're all here. So with that in mind, I'm going to sort of roll through, but what did I say? I feel more energized about this technological transformation than I have for anything in the last decade. So this is absolutely where we are now in terms of the world. So where do we start? Well, the world has changed. The pandemic hit everybody different ways. We were basically, locked behind doors. The world stopped. And then when it opened, another set of transformation. And supply chains were affected. Major inflationary pressures started. The whole world has just been through year after year of turmoil. Remarkably and rapidly, we continue to resolve ourselves and deal with these pressures that have been dealing with us, maintaining revenue operations, thinking about how we can sustain business continuity, world economic continuity. And through that period, we've had been remote, unable to go into the office, unable to connect to our colleagues, going into work from the kitchen table. And then we were allowed to go back into the office. And we were allowed to be hybrid. And that started to allow us all to reevaluate how do we want to work. And everybody has been going through that process. Employers are going through it. What rules, regulations do we want to put in place with regard to return to work policies? What do we want to do in terms of actually improving people's quality of lives? How do we want to make concepts of hybrid working actually a differentiator for us in attracting and retaining talent? And during that period, the world was closed. So businesses struggled to reach their customers, and the businesses went under. And part of this was needing to reassess actually the business continuity risk. How do they retain that traction through to their customers and also their supply chains as well? But ultimately, once any cog in that wheel is broken, businesses went under. So decisions of to furlough or to not furlough with our staff, how do we move forward as a world? And then, but equally at the same time we were closed, all new things opened. Now, that isn't actually about Zoom. Zoom had massive growth during the pandemic. All the technologies to Microsoft are available. Zoom had massive growth. That isn't actually a slide on Zoom. That is a slide during the pandemic of the number of domain registrations that happened to try and actually spoof Zoom. So while all these things are happening, the world is exploding, the world, massive growth for Zoom. Cybersecurity is happening at the same time in terms of risk, threat, being able to actually find ways of conning the world into actually new ways of basically cybersecurity and getting money out of organizations and customers. And during that period, we all had our individual moments of how we wanted to work and reassessed. And I'll put my hand up. I work from a beach. Sometimes, not all the time. But it's made us rethink actually how can we use the technology available to us today into the way we want to work, and obviously recognizing the way our employers will want us to work as well. So it's become a negotiation for many of us with how we engage with our employer. And during that period of being remote, we found new ways of being together as well. Now, I'm pretty sure during the pandemic, pretty much everybody had call fatigue, video conference after video conference. And we found new ways of actually trying to liven that up and make things. So, trying to find new ways of representing and making virtual meetings more interactive. Now, all of this starts to form the foundation of what later on in terms of actually the trends. Again, though, during that period, work was at home and we were equally, home was at work, and everybody was struggling with the balance of how do I keep childcare and the balance of my work commitments while schools are closed, homeschooling, all those. Now, during that period, everybody found new ways of working, new ways of resilience that we want to take forward with us. But, the world was digitizing around us. Part of that sustainability for organizations, they were finding new ways to create digital twins of itself, to digitize its assets, and to provide ways that if actually the physicality of a workplace and their link to the customer doesn't exist, that actually they found new ways of doing that and creating that continuity across supply chains. Examples there would be, I had the cinema example up there before. Disney created Disney Plus in terms of new ways. And this has created a fundamental change in a number of industries of the way supply chains work. And as well as we found ways to digitize our workplaces and our assets, we ourselves found new ways of being digitized. Has anybody actually created an avatar of themselves in the room? Yeah.
Not yet.
It will come. But then I would go beyond an avatar. The power of AI now gives us the ability to actually really create synthesized examples of ourselves, not just avatar, but actually of ourselves, of our faces, of our voices. Again, coming back to what does that mean in terms of the world? That's also a security threat. How do we protect our identities?
Well, it's more than that. It's also you produce a slightly nicer version of yourself, so it can be misleading. So
that already happens on dating sites, right?
Potentially, I mean, absolutely. But it also allows us to scale ourselves, because actually you can now, from content, create automated presentations of yourself. So next year you could have one of me just doing this, just off a video that I created automatically. And that is real. That is capable now. You could create this deck and you could say, go and create a podcast. Go and create a interactive video presentation using my synthesized.
I went along to my first big tech conference for some time, and I got so much more bandwidth between me and the presenters than I get from a Zoom call, partly because it was the people I didn't know I wanted to see that were most interesting. And that's very difficult to do that on Zoom. You can log into people you think you want to see, but finding the unexpected is much harder.
And there's a piece there about actually what is it that you want versus what others on that call and meeting might want as well. Yeah. And there is a piece here that starts to get towards the capabilities of AI now, and the depth of the process does allow hyper personalization, and more that's now going to start to find its way into our workplace, how we receive and communicate with our colleagues, but also as consumers and how we interact with. Take the traditional view of a website. Why does that website have to be the same content for everybody who logs onto it?
It might also affect trust, though, the same way as photography. I used to take pictures of weird photographs and copy them onto film, and people believed that they were real, and it would mess with their minds. These days, anything you do that's a bit unusual, people just assume it's being photoshopped.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
and
it's not even Photoshop now. Most of my stuff was not Photoshop, but I haven't created half these images. Having said that, I do have a qualification in Photoshop.
people stop trusting what they're being told.
Absolutely. So all along through this period, last 3-4 years of turbulence, we have been innovating digitally at a pace that humankind has never actually seen before. And where's that got us? Well, ChatGPT was launched last October. Here's a very inane example of how you could use ChatGPT to help support this particular presentation. That's about as basic as it can get. But this technology has been building for 6-7 years. It was launched last October, and it was the fastest rate of technology adoption ever. You look at all of the other major technological changes we have had since the start of human existence, and this was exponentially off the scale in terms of actually how it could be used. And we all started to log on and see what we could do with ChatGPT. So kids started trying to pass their, do their homework on it, pass the SAT tests, all of those things. And we've been through this period of somehow this magic allows us to speak to it and it can think. And we're working through, what does this mean to us now across all of the ways we interact? What does it mean to consumers? What does it mean to us in the workplace? So that was just last year. Put this together last week. This is already out of date. Just what happened in AI last week. So firstly, ChatGPT went multimodal, video and tutorial content. So you look at some of the other things here then. Tesla's autonomous and robots. Google, again, there are multiple technologies providers. This is not deliberate. I didn't put up that Google had a bit of a bad week, but it's what happened. We've had our own. Remember when we launched Tay, the chatbot?
Yes.
Yeah, it's the world's ideal teenager, and it put my children to shame as to the worst human being it could become within days, because that's what happened, and we've all had to learn from that.
You've missed out, is it Worm GPT, the black hat version of ChatGPT?
Yeah, I mean that wasn't specifically last week, I don't think, was it? But
Well, I know you said that this week, so
yeah, I mean, for anybody who wants to laugh, Glasgow GPT is absolutely hilarious. Seriously. But this is just an example. This is 1 week in terms of the world's advancement in AI. And coming back to ChatGPT. So, the technology is here, it's real. This is not a blip. You think about all the historical hype curves we've had in the last decade of, the metaverse and this has absolutely transformed industries and is already doing so in a sticky future. And that's probably the big difference since the invention of the smartphone. So if you look at sort of, how it started, just for everybody's awareness, so ChatGPT is all based on and was built on Microsoft. ChatGPT is owned by or created by OpenAI. OpenAI runs all its software on Microsoft. That's been a global partnership that was formulated about 4 or 5 years ago. That's essentially the public version of ChatGPT. You're just using it as a consumer. But underneath that, there is a partnership with Microsoft, which actually has meant we've been able to embed all of that capability in all of our products as well through the year. And we'll come back to that a little bit later on. So what does that mean in the workplace? So coming back to that history of AI, that you look all the way back, it's first invented in the 50s, but it's taken us 70 odd years now to actually get to the point where it's really hit mainstream and it's not going to go away. You look at the evolutions that we've been through there of all the different steps of, going forward between machine learning, deep learning, and really now, generative AI is absolutely the use case for AI that's made it accessible. That's not to say it's replaced all the previous ones. All of the previous AI work is still valid, but ChatGPT and generative AI has now given us the ability to interact with it in a seamless, integrated way using our natural language so that in AI consumer, you don't need to be completely reliant on an AI model that's really that you don't understand. This is about actually making this massively available across multiple areas. And you know, Microsoft's products are not the only, and you'll see this across all of the tech industry. Equivalents of ChatGPT as well have also been created in terms of open source capabilities, and generative AI now is here to stay. So
Also at the top of its hype, according to Gartner, it's at the peak of the hype cycle, isn't it?
yeah, potentially. I mean, Gartner's hype cycles always indicate that there's a downward slowdown from there. I'm not seeing that. I am seeing a gathering of pace. We'll come back to that.
So what about the human factors relating to AI? So for example, a lot of people are really concerned that AI will take their jobs and such like, and certain large corporates have deliberately said when they use AI in their products, their aim for AI is to enhance, for example, database administrators' job and make their job easier, not harder. But I know not every company issues a statement like that. So don't we have an ethical and moral obligation to ensure that we use AI responsibly?
Absolutely. What's that? So why now? Why is generative AI suddenly become mainstream? So yes, it's been 6-7 years in the building of it. But equally from that, we've been able to use lessons of how to support technology adoption, how to manage risks associated with AI. But the main way that actually generative AI has come about now is because large scale computing has become absolute mainstream. Certainly not cheap, but when you look at the power of quantum GPU capability, the ability for that then to analyze massive amounts of data in the world. And bear in mind, if we think back to where I started, the creation of the smartphone has massively proliferated the amount of data we have that allows us to train a model and build a model that understands this stuff. So when you think about all of those things and the number of IoT devices we have in our house, I mean, my internet router is absolutely dying on its knees because there's just too many devices, you know. So all of those things, the amount of data we create and the amount that's publicly available on the internet as well, has now given us the ability to create detailed analysis of what was the untapped area of AI, which was actually our use of natural language and text, and be able to create real semantic conversational reasoning from it, rather than just actually simple prompt and answer.
So what's the carbon footprint of all the processing involved in this?
Significant, unless we use AI to manage that. So this is not a deep, we're not going to be opening up the coding books here and starting to talk about how to build a large language model. But everybody, a level playing field here. What is a large language model? It is actually just a language calculator. It's been a model that's been trained on the most amount of information that humanity has ever created to make sense of textual information, and to be able to basically take textual information and turn it into a calculator. And that's kind of where the real magic comes in. So if I was to say to you the word artificial, what would we say next?
Cream.
Artificial
Cream.
I would say intelligence.
Yeah. who would go intelligence first? Yeah. So when we come, cream's a good answer.
No
But
one was going to.
if we think about actually what a large language model is, and generative AI, it is the ability from, based on what you've said, to predict what the next word is most likely to be. Now, if I had said, I don't like mowing my grass, so I'm going to buy some artificial, I could say cream, I would have probably said grass.
Lawn.
Yeah, exactly. So this is where the probabilities is all dependent upon the context that comes before it. And that's essentially what generative AI is.
Well, you've got domain-specific models, basically, so that you train the thing on stuff that's relevant, relevant to the area you want to work in.
It's based on text full stop.
Yeah.
So the LLM isn't actually trained in a specific industry. It's trained on data that is related to an industry.
Yeah.
And it's able to apply that context to what's likely to come next based on what was asked before.
If it's getting it to write code, are you better off giving it coding manuals and examples of good practice to learn from, rather than the general web, because it might learn the most common practice on the web might be the worst practice?
Absolutely. Well, and one of the important things here with generative AI is who owns the accountability for what gets created? Human who uses it. So generative AI is different to previous forms of AI in that the reasoning is actually based on text, which by definition is vague. And the content is created cannot always be predictable to be a 0 or 1, whether it's an image or anything. You will get different answers depending on how you ask the question. If you ask the question in a bad way, you'll get a bad answer, or you get a vague answer. But then part of generative AI is it retains that context. So you can go, I didn't mean that. Can you talk about this? And you can refine those, but you're not training the model. You're just helping educate what comes out of the model for your own benefit.
So based on what you've just said, does that mean we're looking to make our large language models Turing complete? Because the whole point of Turing completeness is you're not able to determine whether it's a computer or a human who's responding. So
I don't think we're there yet.
But is that coming? Is that on the horizon?
I would say to do that, you probably would want something a lot more specific than a generic large language model. You'd want one trained per industry on specific data. It would be trained on a specific scenario. So it wouldn't be as versatile. And that's the thing about LLMs and ChatGPT. You can ask it pretty much anything and you will get a pretty good answer out. Doesn't always mean it's what you wanted. To get proper Turing completeness, I would say you need to go more specific, build your own model for a specific industry.
It feels like there's a tension between the volume of data required to train an LLM, full stop, and then the fact that in a specific domain where you want it to actually work really well, that volume of data is probably not available.
And to create an LLM is a very long and expensive process. So there's a piece here about how do you get the value out of the technology without over-engineering that you aim for perfection.
Right.
And those that aim for perfection are missing early adoption advantages now. And there's a piece here about how, so coming back to the question about code, the capabilities that have been built into ChatGPT also allow it then actually to create code. And that's, so through GitHub Copilot, for example, you can sit there and it's helping you write code as you go. So you just type in a natural language statement, it creates functions that actually do that job. And believe me, it does it very well. I created a startup business in digital music software many years ago, which is writing some pretty niche programming languages. It did it. And I was downright impressed. I was like, I cannot believe that. So yeah, this is a way where you can leverage semantics from natural language to actually create code. And when we're looking at developer productivity, we're looking at about 55% at the moment as a typical improvement in developer productivity. Now, coming back to the question on do you create your own model? Most of the benefits you can get out of large language models is by integrating it with your data without creating a new model. So, for example, there's a process such called retrieval augmented generation, which is about the ability to take the natural language statement, integrate it with data, and then create a natural language statement back to you on the integration of that data. And you do that through prompt engineering. You get 90+% of the answers that you need by doing that. If you start going down into the fine tune and actually create a new model, we're talking, say, years. You can fine tune a model once, you can create a new model years. And so if you think about actually how you can take an LLM, whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's a Facebook model, or it's an open source one, basically through prompt engineering and rapid prototyping approaches, you can very quickly get those benefits. And that's where we are in terms of the world at the moment and the pace of adoption.
That 90% isn't based on research, is it, or is it?
As based on our evidence, yes.
So it's actually can be verified. There is somewhere 90% of the use cases generate something useful.
Is there empirical?
Does it just mean
research paper? It's at the moment, I would say it's a rule of thumb rather than a massive empirical.
So rather than 90%, you could have said lots.
Okay.
90+.
Or based on the work we're doing at HSBC of 9% or more, right?
Absolutely.
We didn't write these slides. That's just what ChatGPT came up with.
So in terms of the use cases for generative AI, what's actually driving the productivity? Productivity can gain from developer productivity through to actually how do you embed these techniques? Firstly, creating chatbots, but secondly, actually deeply integrate them into your processes to actually massively remove the need for human activity and drive massive amounts of automation. But bear in mind, very much what Microsoft's philosophy is, keep the human in the loop. We are still a way away from that being mainstream where AI is totally taking the human out of the loop. The accountability lies with the human to validate what comes out of the model.
Have you told that to us, to
Yes.
HSBC?
Absolutely. Many times, pretty much every day, I think.
Good, that's good.
So
Good.
in your automation slide, you obviously got document processing, et cetera, et cetera. Is there one there that you would argue?
Fire alarm test, did we announce that? It was on the door on the way in, so sorry about that, folks.
Particularly penetrating fire alarm.
No need to leave.
So on the automation front, I know a lot of technologies are using AI and machine learning in things like database technologies to allow the databases to run. I'm kind of surprised that's not on the top use cases list because databases underpin everything in the world. So is that just a bit of a niche market, or because I've seen it happening in a lot of databases at the moment?
So yeah, absolutely. And we've built it on top of our own databases. We've also one of the things I haven't put on here is business intelligence. We've got capabilities that actually create dashboards on the fly. So you don't need to spend time creating a dashboard. You can just describe it and iterate it through conversation. Yes, but actually, when you think about actually the IT side of it, how big a benefit is that versus actually the bigger business benefit? And most of these are focused on business outcomes for the very reason. What does this mean in terms of the way we work? Well, actually, if you look at actually, and this is McKinsey report in terms of the scale of benefit globally. So McKinsey's report this summer predicted that generative AI will have an economic growth of somewhere between 2.6 and 4.4 trillion annually globally. Actually, you look at the areas where the majority of that is. So corporate IT is down here. And so it's the mass employee functions where most of those benefits will be sought. Now, equally supporting this just kind of sets the flavor for those use cases. And there's every organization really looking at the different use cases in each of those functions to say, how can we now drive out benefit? How can we make our team more productive?
Can you explain just why software engineering for corporate IT is right at the top, but corporate IT is down the bottom? It seems to be a sort of mismatch there.
Actually, coding piece in terms of the size of the bet. So if you think about the pace of development in terms of coding, that's actually IT operations. It's quite a
Okay, well, I think software engineering in terms of engineering business outcomes based on software, and you can write lots of code. But I wonder how much of that code is actually useful. When you look at that, there's two different things. The corporate IT is about business outcomes, and the software engineering bit there is about writing code.
I didn't do McKinsey's categorization for that. My take on that was corporate IT is about the operational aspects of IT and running it. And the piece up there is actually when you look at them have money changing and accelerating and innovating, that's where that benefit is. That was my take.
I think if you take your figure before a 55% increase in productivity of coders, that's enormous.
Yeah.
Absolutely enormous.
Sorry, I'm just thinking that it's going to challenge the engineering market, right? Because at the moment in certain regions, like to become an engineer, it's pretty much like, a very good career choice because you will definitely have a job. But obviously, if it becomes semi-automated, like anybody, can go and train themselves to become an engineer. And if you boost the productivity, it means the companies can hire, 20% of the current headcount.
You just have more clients. You just work fractionally. You work 3 jobs, not 1.
We'll come to that, but there is a disparity actually between productivity from AI, depending whether you're an expert or whether you're in office. Actually, in different types of use case, they are different in terms of the amount of gain you get. So, I'm not a Python developer. Could I write a Python app using GitHub Copilot? Yeah, absolutely now. But that doesn't mean I'm good at it. Actually, if I'm an expert Python developer, the pace by which they have been able to actually accelerate has been the bigger area. But then it turns on its head in different use cases.
In terms of use cases, do you think like the medical use case will maybe get people more trusted than the business use case?
Just a bit of a time check.
Yeah.
We've got 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So I think maybe if you don't mind hanging around, Aid,
Sure.
it would be nice if lots of questions, I'm loving the conversation. I hope you are too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Maybe we could just keep the questions and let Aid sort of move on.
I'll rattle through.
And if he can hang around, then we can have a chat during the break, which is immediately after.
Yeah, absolutely. I am going to be around for probably most of today.
Thank you.
So we do a study in Microsoft on our work trends. So how is AI affecting work trends? Firstly, digital debt is costing us. So this is across 31,000 people. Digital debt. How many people struggle to keep on top of their email?
Yeah.
Pretty much everybody. Right. So number one, there's a new adoption, and where previously we'd have said, what is AI going to do for me? There is now within the workplace an acceptance that AI can help us, that actually we can now be. And there's a piece here on the third piece, which is actually, this is starting to help us think about how does this change our skills going forward? And actually, what aptitude do we need to do to get the most out of AI? So firstly, obstacles to productivity. I'm pretty sure most people can resonate with most of those points here. Too many meetings, inefficient meetings. Ultimately, how do you then get to say no to things in your day that still allows you to move forward and get done what you need to do?
You get the computer to say no.
Or you don't go to the meeting, you get it send you a summary of what was said.
Yeah.
Now, the questions that have come up here about, is it about taking out headcount? Actually, the industry is right now very much focused on employee productivity. The more you can get your people to do, the better. This is not primarily about reducing headcount. In terms of what people actually want to try and get out of AI, it's better quality of life, save time, increase their ability to train, consume training material more efficiently. All of these things are available to us today to allow us to feel a little bit more free in our role and reduce ourselves from the things that are taking up most of our time. I always start with, if you had somebody that could do 80% of what you do that allows you to focus on the 20% you really like, would you do that? And in terms of then the skills that this is now driving, analytical judgment is now becoming so much more important in terms of the cognitive skills required. But then there's a piece here, which 3 years ago did not exist. AI delegation and prompting. There wasn't a job title called prompt engineer 2 years ago. We are now at the point of, I say this to kids and when I go into sort of universities as well, one of the most important skills you can now develop is how to ask intelligent questions. How to best ask the question to get, so you don't have to have a conversation, you get it back in your first hit. So, how many times are we going to see a slide like this today? I wonder. So how do we handle that fear in Armageddon? One example here, Sam Altman, who's the founder of OpenAI, ChatGPT, he said, so how do we stop the end of human existence? Well, start with assuming that that's the worst case and that what would happen if we did get there. So how do you build guardrails now to ever stop that happening? Now, one example of this is I tried to actually create that image through most of the regular image creation AI tools. The guardrails in place, I asked the question, please create me an image that looks like a cyborg trying to create the end of the world. And it said, I'm sorry, that breaks our content creation policy. That's an example of why we need to think about this in the end and actually make sure that those guardrails are in place.
Also an example of a limitation of generative AI. That's a perfectly valid question to ask in your context.
In certain contexts, yes, absolutely. And if you're playing Call of Duty and you're speaking and you say, I want to do this, that's a valid example of something you might want to do, which involves malicious violence. But Doesn't mean it's okay in the real world. So there is a context to everything, yes. Now, so how do we go about building a better world? And within Microsoft, we have a philosophy that comes from Brad Smith, our chairman, which is if you create new technology that changes the world, you have a responsibility to help the world adopt that safely. So that's fundamentally what we've been doing. And if you think about the example we used of Tay, the belligerent teenager bot, we learned from that. That founded the way we changed our approach to AI. Regulation. Now, we all think regulation can be cumbersome, it drives cost and all those things. AI regulation is coming. Let's not kid ourselves. It's already happening across the EU. China's already put an AI Act in place. The UK is looking at driving innovation through AI, but hasn't really gone with regulation yet. Well, let's think about some use cases which have come up today. How do we all feel about the use of unmonitored and autonomous AI in warfare? And given what's going on in the Middle East right now,
It's no different from what we've got at the moment, is it? Chaos.
yeah, but I certainly, yeah. So regulation in that space, I would be massively in support of.
How do
Let's
you
think-
enforce it though in that space? How do you enforce it?
This becomes a problem for the government, not me. I wish I could answer that question. So we then, if you think about some other examples, we talked about medical. Use of AI in medical use cases massively valuable. We need it. But how would you feel if something came back off a scan and no human had actually reviewed what had come back and it was? I'd be a little bit dubious about that. How would you feel about getting on a plane if it was totally built by robots and all of the flight path search was built with AI without a human in the loop? I'd feel a little bit nervous about that too. So different use cases, I'm more than happy to, speak to my bank, utilities and all those things. But when you think about physical safety, world safety, these are the things where we are absolutely going to need regulation. Microsoft built its AI principles off the back of our early work in AI. And it's basically these principles: privacy, inclusivity, accountability, transparency, fairness. So anybody who wants an analogy, you can either have fat rip or you can have pie fart. But that helps you remember those. And when you take away these slides, that will help you always, with them in the morning, come back to actually. Now, all this is this helps you to build good practice into an individual application. It's great. And then you start to say, okay, at an individual application level, these are the things I want to drive out. Explainability, fairness. Yes, absolutely. That doesn't really solve the future for us. Because when you think about the next industrial revolution, which is AI, we are in it, that doesn't solve the macroeconomic things. That just talks about an individual use case. So how do we think about how AI is now going to change the world? And there's probably some history here that we can refer back to. So your previous industrial revolutions of mechanics, then energy and electricity, and then digital in the 1960s, they all actually created economic growth. Now, so the question was, what happens if people start laying off everybody? Well, yes, absolutely, we need to mind it. But previous industrial revolutions have always created more jobs. So the Luddites weren't actually people who are opposed to technology. They were afraid of their jobs, and so they went burning the looms in the factories. Now, think about that in terms of how we move forward with AI. Who are the new Luddites? How do we help them with their psychological safety in adopting AI? And actually, as you build an application and part of it says, is this answer correct or not? The Luddites of today will say no, whether it's right or not, because that will protect their job. So there's a piece here about as we adopt and think about AI holistically in a workplace, people will be fearing their jobs. But equally, there was a piece about how do you build for psychological safety and do this. And again, part of this is in the message that it's history on our side here. This is about allowing people to do more, save time, do more efficient work, and enjoy their work. Why now? Well, we're in a massive global economic inflation crisis. All technology is a deflationary activity. So there is a piece right now where every department, every business is struggling with in-year budgets because never been enough. We're challenged. We've got inflationary pressures on our supply chain. Our costs are going up. There's a piece here about what happens if you don't do this now. And how do you avoid that first, avoid being caught out? Because actually in the times of economic crisis, it's the new factors of technology that create that deflationary pressure and actually accelerate business growth. We talked also about what happens if we do lose people from the workforce globally. We are actually at the first time in humanity, we're heading for a global depopulation. We know that. So in 2017, the birth rate in the US was 1.7 per couple. Imagine just the US, but US is a pretty big country. You multiply that across all the major global populations. China's obviously had a one-child policy in for a long time. The global population for the first time ever is going to start to slow down and decrease. It's already slowing down. It is actually going to decrease somewhere between 2050 and 2080. What does that mean? Well, we've got fewer people to work. We've got an older population. What happens if 30, 40, 50% of our workforce are now replaced by AI? Who sustains society? Who pays for our pensions, our healthcare, as we're all older? So there's a piece here to say, coming back to regulation, something will happen that starts to prevent that. Going back, how do we stop Armageddon? Something will happen, and it could well be that AI starts getting taxed by economies. As you displace somebody from the workplace, you may be required to pay a robot tax or something like that. These are the things that we don't know, but if we don't do something, there is actually going to be a global impact. Food for thought. So how do we make AI solve the world's problem, not the Armageddon piece? So there's a whole raft of pieces here where AI can massively help. AI for accessibility. You can then obviously accelerate sign language capabilities. This example here was a real example of scanning the barcode of medical information. I personally suffer from celiac disease, so actually being able to scan food and being able to say whether it's safe for me or not would be amazing. Whether that's in a supermarket or a restaurant, all of these things. We absolutely have the ability to make the world a better place for people who currently are disadvantaged in many ways through access to technology. Microsoft has a Seeing AI app. I don't know whether any of you have seen it, but essentially it allows visually impaired people to walk around and the phone is actually being their eyes. Now you apply the fact that we've now got much more greater multimodal capabilities in AI, you could apply that across other sensories as well. Now, AI for healthcare and wellbeing. We've talked about the impact here. What does it mean if suddenly we start to crumble in our healthcare systems? There's no sustaining future. There's a piece here where AI has to help our healthcare, and we're already doing it today in terms of the use of AI to, in terms of scan results, improving and taking clinician notes, massively improving the operational efficiency of NHS and other care trusts. There is a piece here where this has to happen for the future sustainability of our society. And when we look at actually globally how we join up and connect as a world, AI breaks down barriers. The ability to have a real-time call with somebody in a different language now that you don't speak, never been possible before. It allows people with, who are maybe different neurodiversities. It allows you in the workplace, and we'll come back to this in the video, so very quickly, I'm going to be very quick. It allows people who with different neurodiversity to actually have ways by which they can feel engaged in the workplace. So, and the final one, we talked about sustainability. AI does bring with it a technological cost. These computers take energy. But when you think about the use of AI and what it can do, and the second and third line benefits you would want to achieve about using AI to drive down consumer use of energy, workplace efficiency, all of these things, and also then use AI to manage your own IT estates more efficiently to reduce the carbon footprint of technology. AI has a massive role to play in sustainability. So, learn, experiment, scale. This is so important. You don't know the answers, but you have to move on this journey bit by bit. This is a very short video. So I've talked about a number of themes here. productivity, workplace. So this is a 2-minute montage of Microsoft, starting from Satya Nadella, our chairman and CEO, on actually how we've embedded AI across our technologies now. Other technology providers available as well. But if you think about actually, what does this mean to different things that you try and do in your work, that hopefully this will start to bring it to life.
Today, we are at the start of a new era of computing. At the center of this new cloud experience is an all-new Bing search engine and edge web browser. I'm going to look at a 55-inch TV, and now I want to refine this query. So I can do that by going to chat. We have now a new chat scope. Bing knows the context, and it just goes in and refires the queries.
Imagine every employee having a co-pilot that is able to analyze reports, write reports, summarize projects, create a task list, even brainstorm with you.
Introducing Microsoft 365 Copilot. It works alongside you, embedded in the apps millions of people use every day. Now you can be more creative in Word.
Copilot can use your internal document and can give you a first draft. It inserts product images and pulls in relevant visuals from other files. The average person uses less than 10% of what PowerPoint can do. Copilot unlocks the other 90% using just your words. Copilot translates Word into PowerPoint and can even animate the slide.
The real magic of Copilot happens during a live meeting. Here, you're in a meeting with your team. You can ask Copilot to summarize what's happened so far. Copilot is really capturing the spirit of the discussion. As the meeting progresses, you can check on where people stand. You can even ask Copilot what questions are unresolved. Copilot and Viva will offer leaders an entirely new way of understanding and engaging their workforce. With Copilot, I can ask questions of my Glint data using natural language. I ask Copilot if teams that coordinate in-office days together are more engaged than those that don't. Blending Glint's survey data with Viva Insights and the Microsoft Graph.
Viva Sales now gives sales reps AI capabilities that enable personalized coaching and intelligence that help sellers push a deal to the next stage and ultimately close more deals. It all works inside Outlook and automatically integrates with the data inside your CRM.
With Copilot and Power Automate, you can automate things in minutes using your own words. With a little direction, Copilot can write a summary of the problem, post that summary in the appropriate Teams channel, and tag the right colleagues to resolve the issue. This now gets seamlessly added to my workflow, getting it just the way I want it.
Developers using Copilot today see a 55% developer productivity boost. And over 40% of all the lines of code that a developer that has Copilot enabled is now actually AI generated.
Microsoft Security Copilot is a game changer, empowering you to defend at the speed of AI.
We deeply integrate Security Copilot with our existing product experiences and workflows, and it will work with third-party security products and data as well.
We think the era of AI is here. We think the ability to capitalize on that is limitless, and we're excited to partner with you.
So a little bit salesy, but if you think about the perspectives there of how every single role and function in the workplace is now going to be changed, but equally there's a really more important point, is that previously we've thought about applications, we've thought about data, we've always thought about as a monolithical. And if you integrate two, that's great. We are now talking about actually natural language becomes the way you integrate with your applications and data, not just Microsoft products, but everything that we start to build now will be natural language based. And that now becomes the leveler by which people will achieve multi-application process orchestration through one sentence. Well, this application do that, well, this application do that. One sentence, multiple end-to-end executions across the system. So really fundamentally, a mind shift change in the way that applications will be built in the future. And on that note, we are almost there. So, seem to have almost there. Well moved. I think that we're pretty much the go back to my final takeaway slide. Done something on here. I now seem to have switched screens.
Industry-wide, not just Microsoft.
It's already industry-wide. So using that example, ChatGPT has defined a standard for extensions. So you can, from a natural language, you can be going on booking.com, you can be raising a ticket in Jira. Microsoft and OpenAI are all using exactly that same standard. So is it totally industry-wide? No, not
It's
yet.
ethical standards as well. Isn't that?
I think
There are ethical.
that will come more about regulation than ethical standards. Well, just to summarize. So there's a number of use cases they apply across all areas of e-business. It is absolutely changing the relationship we have with the thought of AI and how AI can help you. On the top right, for those of you that don't have access to any of this stuff today, just go on Bing chat and actually transform the way you use and conversation. That helps you develop prompting skills. You know, that's got to be one of the most important skills going forward. And then really, absolutely, the fundamentals of this is, we do have to think with potential misuse of AI. So all of this is grounding it in responsible. On that note.